Hello, my name is Michael Long, and I want to welcome you to In Other Worlds. In Other Worlds is a video podcast series presented by the Department of Modern Languages and Cultures at Baylor University in Waco, Texas. In this series, we will introduce you to research conducted by members of our faculty, some of our programs, and highlight student experiences. Before we begin, I would like to remind you that the views and opinions expressed in these podcasts are those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views or positions of the Department of Modern Languages and Cultures or Baylor University. In this, our second episode in the series, our guests are Dr. Karol Hardin and Dr. Allyson Irom. Dr. Hardin is also Director of Spanish for Health Professions, which is our topic today. So welcome to both of you, Dr. Hardin and Dr. Irom. And from here out, I will use your first names. Is that okay?
Yes, it works.
Okay. So thank you for joining us today. I'm very excited to hear from both of you about the program in Spanish for Health Professions at Baylor. Dr. Hardin and Dr. Irom have also published a textbook for Spanish for medical professions titled Español conversacional para profesiones médicas, or Conversational Spanish for Medical Professions, published by Brill in 2016, then a second edition in 2018. So we've brought you here today and invited you here to talk to us about the program for Spanish for Medical Professions. So at first, could you, one of you, perhaps describe what the impetus was for creating this type of program?
Sure. Well, we actually found out that this is a 43-year-old. The first course is 43 years old.
Oh.
And so that standalone course has been around a lot, but it has in various permutations. Mm-hmm. And so it was really focused on literature and just memorizing a lot of vocabulary and a lot of reading and writing. And then in 2008, I was asked to revamp it and make it more practical for actually speaking to patients. And so that's how it came about. But then we got asked by students for more, and then continued from there into the certificate that we now have.
Okay. All right. Tell us a little bit about the certificate.
Yeah, so the certificate is really because students kept asking, and I said, well, if you want more advanced courses, then you got to convince me. Mm-hmm. And so they wrote essays and convinced me, and I gave them an independent study. They formed the advanced course, and then from there they asked for more, and so we came up with a certificate that incorporates research and service learning, and then of course is very conversational as well.
Sure. Okay. Describe for us, so the course is an intermediate level Spanish course, but how does it differ from any other intermediate level Spanish course?
Yeah, Spanish 2321 has some unique features. It focuses largely on conversation and listening competency and practices, as well as cultural proficiency. So the students get to see, learn, hear about all different Hispanic cultures as we go through the semester. And then, of course, they're practicing consistently in those sort of simulated conversational groups and in pair work as well. And so they get to actually practice their Spanish, as they will when they have patients as professionals in the future. At the 4321 level, that's sort of the capstone course of the certificate. They have clinical observations. There's some outreach into the community aspect of the program. And of course, it's a more advanced, challenging course for those people who are getting the certificate. And the certificate includes 2321, 3302 or 4, which is a conversational class, and then any class of their choosing at the next level. And of course, they do a project with a mentor, a faculty mentor, at some point through that process. And with Dr. Hardin's permission, then they enter into the 4321 and get that more in-depth practical experience for the certificate.
Is there also a practicum program with local clinics or working with actual patients at any point? Can you tell us how that's organized?
Yeah, so that's actually part of the advanced course, and they have clinical observations. But they one of the challenges is logistics, trying to get that into their schedules. So we have a semester's worth of recordings from Ecuador and here, and they get to observe those each week. And then we have discussions and reflections on that. So they're actually getting a lot of shadowing experience without having to do the challenge of actually scheduling it all. But they do have actual clinical observations
That's
too.
great. Yes. So can you walk us through a typical class, either the advanced or the lower level, the intermediate course? Like what types of activities do you do? And do the students engage in role play where one is the clinician and the other is the patient?
Yeah,
Just tell us what a typical class is like.
I can probably tell you the intermediate typical lesson. The whole time we're trying to integrate culture. We're also reviewing a little bit of grammar, but the main focus is trying to get the students together and maybe looking at pictures or prompts or little conversation cards to get them going so that they can role play. One of them can be the doctor, one can pretend to be the patient, and they can utilize all of that vocab that we've got in each one of the chapters and sort of focus in on different sorts of situations that they might encounter as a nurse or doctor in the future in a patient setting in the consultation room. And so we do several of those kinds of activities to try and get them more comfortable speaking, get them good pronunciation practice, and set up for the future where they're, not so self-conscious about things and they're more likely to open up. But that cultural component is always sort of the foundation as well, because if you don't know sort of how formal to be or what level of speech to use or what kind of background these people who are your patients might potentially have, you have to sort of be open-minded and humble, use your cultural humility while you're doing all of these sort of practice conversations as well.
So the Spanish-speaking world is enormous and covers different parts of the globe. There are many different cultures, many different countries, and I'm sure that there must be some differences in how people discuss their health issues. So could either of you or both of you give us an example of ways that some Spanish-speaking communities might prefer to talk about their health or how they might resist talking about their health? Are there any particular things that you could give us as examples?
Yeah, so that's a really complicated but great question, right? So we always tell our students there's lots of cultures, lots of varieties of Spanish. And so the local variety is often what you want to learn, but they're going to be seeing other people. And I give the example of in the South, we say, I feel puny, and it doesn't mean I feel small. Well, we have vocabulary like that, where you might say, estoy decaída, which means kind of I feel down, but it can index mental health. And so you need to know what these expressions mean in a given culture because they don't mean the same thing everywhere.
I see.
And like in Ecuador, patients would come into the hospital and say they had itchy feet. They would never say, I think I have kidney problems, but that's what that meant. And then the physicians would know biomedically, it was not a kidney issue. It was often related to lower back pain or something else. But you have to understand the culture to be able to get at. Language doesn't tell you everything. You also have to have a context.
And we have a great variety of students who take these classes. And so during the first few weeks where we're really focused in on culture, I definitely encourage them to jump in, to contribute their experiences from any culture in the world. Are there similarities? Are there differences? What's in the book? What's not in the book? What is your personal or your family experience, traditions, things like that? So I think that makes it a little bit richer as well. When you ask them, contribute. Make sure you're telling us about your story as well.
Oh, good.
And I think bilingualism really adds another layer of complication and interesting language, because here in Central Texas, you have a lot of bilingual people, and they may go into English to control the conversation or to show their respect or their equality with the doctor, or to leave somebody out of a conversation, or to show engagement. So there's a number of reasons why you can switch in and out of languages, and sometimes it's an emotional topic and you pick your language of choice, right?
Right. How prevalent are these types of courses throughout the United States? Are there many places people can have this type of experience in learning Spanish, or just tell us about that. What does the landscape look like for this type of course?
Yeah, so there's been some recent studies in undergrad Spanish. It's pretty common. About 43% of undergrad universities offer medical Spanish, but it's usually one course. And then at the medical school level, 78% offer medical Spanish. It's often one course taught often by medical students just who have no training whatsoever in teaching a language. And so we're really unusual in that we have 5 trained people who teach language for a specific purpose. And we're really unusual in that we incorporate research, community service, learning, and then that it's a full certificate too.
Right. Okay. What type of feedback do you get from local physicians about the course or the need for this type of course? Do you have anything to share in that regard?
Yeah, I think I would be quite wealthy just based on the number of physicians who say that they wish that they had learned Spanish. And that early on, my husband is a physician, and so we taught a continuing ed course for physicians, and that kind of got me realizing, wow, this is really a need. And we get a lot of feedback from our students also as they go off to med school and residency, and some of them are back in the community, which is just full circle.
Okay.
It's very rewarding to get that feedback from students, especially who say, I used it on the first day of my internship this summer, for example.
Right.
So yeah, we get a lot of nice positive comments back from the students as well, who realize just almost immediately how useful this is. It's a practical course.
Right. Good. I can imagine, it may not be true in Waco or McLennan County, but I can imagine that in larger cities, for example, Houston, where there are entire neighborhoods which are Chinese or Vietnamese speaking, that there may be a need at some point, or that maybe they exist in these types of courses for Chinese for medical professions, or Vietnamese for medical professions, or Korean for medical professions. Do you know of, or have you heard of courses like that?
There are some. They're kind of scattered. But yeah, in larger locations where there is like a real need and there is a community, there are some. They tend to be kind of locally grown, but once in a while there's a hospital that that has a course.
I know a lot of people are doing interpretation via Zoom or electronic, things like that. But in my experience, when a person walks in the room and begins speaking to the patient, they suddenly become a lot more relaxed and a lot more willing to open up because they've got that personal connection that's so important to a lot of people when they're vulnerable in those situations.
Sure. As language teachers, we know that language is very much a part of a person's identity, and their native language has a special place. It's their comfort zone. They feel safe using it. And I can imagine that can change the tone of a doctor's office visit or a consultation just by being able to address them and ask them questions in their own language.
Absolutely. They have done outcome studies. And if you have a language concordant visit, the outcomes are better in a whole host of areas. And these are in medical journals. And we did focus group interviews with a linguistics study I did in Ohio, and the patients consistently referred to remote interpretation, like, with a camera or whatever, as la máquina, the machine.
The machine.
And when they talked about an interpreter that was in person, they liked that better in terms of satisfaction.
Right. Would that be the same even if it were like a Zoom call where the person on the other end was also a real person? Or
I don't know. I don't think so, because there's nothing to replace that extemporaneous conversation that happens. Like, how are you today? And back and forth, those little things, the little personal touches that we all, include in our regular conversations. We would probably be a lot more inhibited doing that with La Máquina, for example.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right. Well, I know in my own personal experience, whenever you're discussing anything with the screen, even though you may know the person very well on the other side, there's a barrier. There is some kind of barrier. So it is very, very different. Can you tell us, you've told us a little bit about how the classes run, what the goals are, but if you could say, what do you want students to walk away from Baylor who has gone through both courses and done the certificate, what do you want them to walk away knowing or understanding?
We want them to obviously improve in their language skills and then also be humble enough to realize that they have a lot further to go, that there's more to learn, that they need to continue learning Spanish, learning about different cultures. We want them to obviously have something that looks great for their medical school and nursing school applications in the future. This is sort of a little gold star on their transcript. But most importantly, we want them to have empathy for other people, be advocates for those who, for English is not their first language, for example. So you can put yourself in their shoes, view it from their perspective in a much richer way, where you're understanding how much you know and how much you still have to know. But yeah, there's anything else to add to the certificate goals?
I would say understanding the patient's experience, because the patient's experience is not in the doctor's office, and you're a much more compassionate doctor or any medical personnel if you understand more about what it looks like outside of a doctor's office and understand how little you know, really, and you're always learning.
Sure. I mean, people ask me sometimes, how long have you been studying Russian or learning? How long did you study Russian? I'm like, what do you mean I'm still studying it? Because you can never know everything.
Right.
It's a constant, it's a lifelong journey,
Exactly.
right? Okay, our time is about up. I want to thank our guests, Dr. Allyson Irom and Dr. Karol Hardin, once more for spending the time with us. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to come and do this taping. I do have one item of news. If you watched our first episode in this series, where the guest was Dr. Teresa Kennedy, professor of French, who spoke about her new book titled Dramatic Proverbs. Dr. Kennedy's book has just been selected as the winner of the Society for the Study of Early Modern Women and Gender Critical Editions Award for a teaching text. So congratulations to Dr. Kennedy. And I would like to invite you to please look forward to our next episode, episode 3, in our series in November, when our guests will be Professor Eva Hruska and Kylie Town. Professor Hruska translated a play by a well-known Czech playwright and novelist Karol Čapek titled RUR for Rossum's Universal Robots. And one spoiler, Čapek invented the word robot in 1920. Baylor Theater is staging a production of RUR using Professor Hruska's translation, with Kylie Town directing in December. So be sure to look out for that. Thank you very much for joining us, and hope to see you again next time.